Discussion topic. Is WoW a good single-player game? The answer to this question may surprise you. That is to say, this is actually a pretty divisive topic for a lot of people. I personally think WoW is a great single-player game, and when I mentioned this fact offhandedly in one of my videos once, I got a lot of comments showing their displeasure in the fact that I called WoW a good single-player game, and how it's people like me who treat it as a single-player game that are ruining it. And, I mean, to an extent, I can kind of understand where they're coming from, even if they are very extreme on this opinion, I think. I don't know, like, who cares how other people are playing the game? But this does lead to an interesting thing. Like, is WoW a good single-player game? Are there people who play the game only with other people? The answer to both of those questions is yes. I'm sure there's more people to it, but I'm going to talk about my experience with WoW as a single-player game, and why I like it that way. Because you see, some backstory with my time playing WoW. I first started playing WoW in Wrath of the Lich King when I was in high school. And in high school, I didn't have free time. I played sports, I got straight A's, and I had a part-time job on the weekend, which meant I had 2 hours of free time at night before I had to go to bed. So I would metagame my time in school, that way I'd get all my homework done in class or between classes, so I didn't have to do anything, and then I had practice for 4 hours after class. And on the weekends, I would work half the day, so all of my free time was basically spent playing WoW. And during all those school activities and my job, which was in customer service at a water park, where I had to talk to tons of people all day, and then in sports, where I had to talk to my teammates all day, and then just in school, where I had all my friends, where I had to talk to people, I had to talk to people all day long. And the last thing I wanted to do was talk to people when I got home and played WoW online. I was socialed out. I'm an introvert. I have no problems talking to people, and I had lots of friends, but I needed time to recharge by myself. And I also was really addicted to WoW at this time. So I would log into WoW and just play by myself. I would do everything by myself, and I wouldn't talk to anyone. If something required me to talk to someone, I'd be like, oh, this is something I'm not going to do. Luckily, there wasn't too many things like that, even in Wrath. And I basically just spent my whole time leveling anyway. I think it took me a year to level my first character to max level. And that's because I kept starting new alts all the time. And because I really like doing battlegrounds. Like, low-level battlegrounds. And back then, battlegrounds didn't give you experience, so doing all those battlegrounds was stalling out my leveling process a lot, but I was having tons of fun just exploring everything and trying new classes, and eventually I got my 100 to max level when I was like, you know what? Instead of starting all these new alts and leveling them all equally, I think my time would be better spent if I leveled one alt to max level, and then I could funnel max level stuff to my alts later. Because I was always poor too, I never had any gold, and all of the guides online were for having a max level character, and I was like, I guess I gotta do that. And all this to say, I didn't talk to anyone online. That was not something I wanted to do, and was something I actively avoided, and I played WoW for over a year, not talking to anyone. I don't think I was even in a guild either. And it was glorious. It was like so much fun. It was a great escape from my social life because I talked to too many people. And I've heard so many stories about people who've played WoW that's the complete opposite. Like, they didn't do anything in high school or have a job, and they probably didn't have any friends either. So when they did get home, that was their chance to finally talk to people. I'm talking about teenagers exclusively here. But like, even older people, after their job, maybe a desk job or something, they'd come home and play WoW, and then they'd finally have people to talk to or people to talk to in their guild. There's lots of people who are like shy and never talk to anyone on in person, and as soon as they get online, they start, talking to everyone in WoW. And it turns out, like my case, where I talk to people all the time in real life, and then when I came online, I didn't talk to anyone. That was like not the norm. The norm was the other way. It was like vastly more people had the experience where they finally found friends online. And I was like, wow, that makes sense if you really think about it, because like the kind of game that WoW is kind of attracts the kind of people who aren't the most social in the world anyway. So, I mean, sure. It makes more sense that way. But that also leads me into thinking, like, actually, I don't know where I'm going with this. Usually for these discussion videos, I have, like, a thing where I can kind of predict the other side of the argument. And in this case, I don't really have anything prepared. And I don't think it really matters. Because in the discussion, in the comment response, that's usually where I'll go over, like, the other side. And this one's purely just to start the discussion. I don't have it anywhere near as prepared as I did the other ones. In this one, I basically just have my own personal experience of I played WoW as a single-player game, and I loved it, and it was great. And it provided so many hours of enjoyment without ever having to talk to anyone. I mean, I guess I did join Battlegrounds. You can't do those by yourself, but you can queue up for them by yourselves, and you can definitely finish one without ever talking to anyone. So at that point, that's not really a single-player portion of the game. That was definitely a group project. So, I mean, there is like a great counterexample, I guess, to the fact that WoW is not a single-player game, because one of the things I like to do the most was definitely not a single-player activity. But then, like, what is there to do in the game that's single-player? Isn't everything in WoW geared towards grouping up with other people? So, for a lot of people, I've noticed, what gameplay exists in WoW boils down to whatever the latest raid is, PvPing, or running Mythic plus dungeons. And everything else is considered secondary or unimportant when it comes to talking about, game design or what there is to do in WoW. If there's a lull in between raids, people will say there's nothing to do on WoW. If they already have all their gear maxed out, stuff like that. And there is so much more to do in the game besides end game related activities that I actually made a video on it. It's called Top 10 Alternative Things to Do in WoW. And despite the fact that a majority of the comments were just making jokes about how terrible BFA was, the video did well. It got a ton of likes and views. And despite all the meme comments, it wasn't dislike bombed or anything. It was half of the comments that weren't the meme comments were like, oh, this totally got me to try, RPing or something like that. Because there is so much to do. And I'm always reminded of that whenever I'm researching a new video. More recently, I was researching the video on Top 10 Easiest to Get Mounts Part 2. And basically all of them required really long grinds that had an end goal in sight. There was a lot of grinding you had to do, but you were guaranteed a mount at the end of it. And all of those took an incredibly long time. And all of them could be done solo. In fact, most of them were better if there was no one else around. Because some of them took a lot longer because of how much competition I had. When I was fishing up 500 dagger maws for the, the Darkmoon Fair one, that was a solo activity for 4 hours, or killing dinosaurs on the Isle of Giants. That took a week or two, and it was definitely would have taken a lot less if there was no one else around. farming the rep in BC dungeons, farming rep in Cataclysm dungeons. Pretty much everything on there was incredible long time sinks that rewarded you something at the end. And that was just the ones I put in the video. There were so many other ones that didn't make the list. Like, I had enough to make a completely new video 2 times over. I think there was like 20 more mounts that were in the same vein as the ones from that video. Plus, you know, the one before that. And the thing is, there's other things to grind in the game besides mounts. You know, there's also pet battles and rep, toys, and transmog to an extent. Like, there aren't a lot of things that lead to transmog. Usually you get those from, like, random drops or from dungeons. But even that's something you can grind on your own. And then there's gold making. This leads me on to when high school was over and I no longer had, like, no free time anymore. I instead had mountains of free time because I had decided to take a year off after high school before going to college. And I still had my part-time job, but I was only working on the weekend. So I had 5 days every week where I didn't have anything to do. Or I guess I should say I had planned my life around this. For 5 days, I played WoW all day, every day. As soon as I woke up, I'd get on and play, and then I'd play until I went to bed. And I did this for an entire year, and that was probably the best year of my life. It was so much fun. But a lot of that time was spent on solo ventures. And a big thing I got into was gold making. Gold making, there's so much to it that it was basically its own little mini game inside the game, because almost every faucet of the game has gold in it some way or shape or form. Like, even if you don't think about it, you do use gold for basically everything, and there's so many ways to get gold. It's ridiculous, and that was a whole other little rabbit hole I went down. It was a lot of fun, and I basically treated gold making as if it was my second job. And a vast majority of that, like 99% of it, is a solo venture, and it's a part of WoW, and it's a huge part of it. And there are some people who only make gold make, and they don't really do anything else in the game, just because there's so much to do with it. Now, I'm sure there's other games that have better economies or whatever, but WoW itself has a pretty robust one where you could spend all your time playing and only doing things which make you gold. Like, not even just farming ore and herbs. That's usually what people might think if they don't know how to make gold. Or, you know, crafting mats or something. There's just a lot that goes into it. Like, if I were to explain how I make gold right now, like, I do it very casually in BFA, because doing it how I used to is insane. At one point on my server, my 2 banger alts supplied half of the server's auction house with their materials. Basically, half of all auctions on the auction house were being sold by my 2 banker tunes, because I was just pushing so much product. And I had to use 2 banger tunes because there was just too much items to deal with one character at a time. And nowadays, I don't do anything near as hardcore as that, because that's crazy. And I spent all my time on doing that. And what I do now is I basically lightly craft enchants. Sometimes I'll do gems, sometimes I'll do flasks. And then I also do garrison stuff a little bit. Like, on one of my tunes, I'll go around and interact with like 3 buildings in order to make bags. Because you can get all of the materials to create netherweave bags, I think, from your garrison alone without having to spend any gold. So if you do your dailies there, you can make like an extra 2 to 3k a week. And then on another server, I do Half Hill Farm for Mist of Pandaria on 2 characters. And I just do those every day because those give a lot of Trillium ore and Ghost Iron ore, which sell better than BFA ore because that ore is used to create a mount. And I send over the ghost iron ore to my engineer for the once a day daily to create like a stick that I use to create a pet, which I'll then transfer over to my main server, and then I'll sell the pet on the auction house. And then I have 2 other tunes parked in front of 2 pet battles that have like a once a day daily for a chance to drop a rare pet. And that's my daily routine in the morning, is just to do those things. And it doesn't take very long. But that's just like a very casual way of making gold, and there's like all those different steps in it. And if you take it super seriously and super hardcore, there's so many more things you can do throughout the day, that there are literally channels dedicated to gold making, and they are never really out of content, I'd assume. I don't know. I'm sure you'd eventually run out of giving people good ideas, because after a while it's just maintaining it and then trying to manage your time better. But yeah, there's tons to do in the game on your own. But the thing is, WoW is an MMO, so I got this comment a lot that you shouldn't play an MMO if you're not there to play with other people. And I don't agree with that, because it's like, you know, who are you to tell me what to do? I like to have fun doing stupid shit. And if I want to play WoW single player, I should be able to. But there's also the issue that's brought up sometimes that people who only want to play WoW single player are pushing for changes to make the game more single player friendly, which is ruining it for the people who want a more social aspect. And I was like, I guess that's true. I guess I could totally see that. I have seen people asking for changes that would definitely ruin the social aspect more. And they have been making some changes to kind of ruin that a little bit more. But also, you know, I don't think that's really a big deal. And I guess that would be the only really point of discussion, I'd assume. I don't know. I'm pretty firmly in the camp that WoW is a fun single-player game. Because there's so much to do on the single-player front where you don't have to talk to people. But that could also be seen as a negative, because some people really want to talk to other people in the game. Because, you know, it's an MMO and sense of community and thing. And that's like one of the big selling points of classic WoW, is how you have to talk to people to complete things, and stuff like that. And it's like, sure, grouping up with people definitely makes things easier. Sometimes you'll be forced to group up with people in order to take down elites or get past hard mobs, because vanilla WoW is just really hard that way. And that's all totally true. But also, that makes it really hard for a solo player, which could also be fun in its own way. Because it's so difficult to do everything by yourself, it makes it more of an accomplishment when you do that stuff by yourself. So I don't think it really is one or the other. I think they kind of complement each other. People can play with other people if they want. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but that's just because I'm a loner who's antisocial. So, of course not. And that loner status definitely carries over into WoW. I rarely do things with other people. Unless it's for like a raid night, or I'm doing my islands for the week. Basically things where I have to do them with other people. Because I do raid. You can't raid by yourself. When I did eventually raid in the Cataclysm, or at the very end of Wrath of the Lich King, I think that's when high school ended. I did have to talk to people, and then I got very social in the game, actually. And I met so many people, and I have like friends that I still talk to today that I met in Cataclysm. So, I mean, I also participated in the social aspect of the game, and I met a lot of great people. But I also played solo for like a year and a half before I did all that, and I had tons of fun as well. And I still mainly play by myself all the time. Like, I still have to group up with people when I do Mythic Plus or raids or everything, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I spend more of my time by myself. I definitely am more of a solo player than I am someone who likes to come on to play with friends or something. And now, this is where the comments come in. What do you think? Do you think WoW is a good single-player game? Do you have stories of yourself being completely antisocial like I was in-game? Or were you the kind of person who went to WoW as your only way to make friends? Or, that's your big thing. Because I also hear lots of people who quit the game because their friends quit. And, I've had tons and tons of friends quit. I don't think any of the friends I played with back in Cataclysm still play the game. And I kept playing because I think I was a solo player. Like, my enjoyment of the game wasn't tied to my friends. It was tied to the game itself. And since it is such a social game, if all your friends leave, of course you'd want to leave as well. Because you want to play with your friends. And the game doesn't matter that much. It's just a place where you guys met. And that's why I've been able to play the game for so long without quitting, whereas everyone else I know has. So if anything, the single players, the WoW solo players, they're the ones who play the game the longest. I guess. I don't know. I'm not really trying to make a point here. I'm really just curious about other people's opinions on this matter. And why people might think being a solo player is a bad thing. I don't really get it. Other than, maybe if there's too many solo players, they might ruin the game by asking Blizzard to make changes to accommodate them. I guess.